Hi.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Dr. Arjan Khalsa, and today I have with me nurse practitioner Catherine Veilleux, and she and I have been working together for about 8 years in our little Espanola office, doing good work. And I wanted to invite her today, and she so graciously offered during her lunch break, which is awesome, to talk with us about diabetes. She is really good at this, and I thought she could give a way better explanation than I could on some different topics that we find important. We're a lot of times working with prevention, but also sometimes people do end up with a sickness or a disease, and we want to know how to treat it once people are dealing with it in the best way we can do with what we know how. Catherine's been working for 21 years as a nurse practitioner, and I tell everybody she's an old Army nurse. She's like the best. She's so relaxed and fun and comfortable, and anybody who goes to see her, they're like, oh, you're right, she's so awesome. So she's one of the best people I could think of to talk with us about this today. So I'm going to turn it over to you. So
Okay, and you had some questions?
I have some questions. So
Okay.
one of the first questions I have is, so a lot of us know about diabetes, and I know it's actually growing in incidence. I was
Right.
reading about it.
It's
So
increasing.
okay, and do you want to talk a little bit about that? Have you noticed even an increase in your practice with people having diabetes?
It's
Maybe.
hard to say whether it's an increase. I'm just seeing a lot of people that are pre-diabetic because we're doing screening labs. We're screening their fasting blood sugar, and we're noticing somebody has a high elevated fasting blood sugar. Then we do a little more blood work, and then we oftentimes will discover they're diabetic, or somebody will come in and they have read the symptoms of diabetes on the web and come in and they actually have the diabetes and kind of self-diagnose themselves from information they got on the web, which is good. I mean, the web is full of a lot of inaccurate information, but it also has a lot of good information that people do find.
So just going into that a little bit more, what kind of things would people find, or what kind of symptoms, if people are experiencing them, are kind of pre-diabetic or diabetic symptoms?
Well, usually you don't have symptoms when you're pre-diabetic because the blood sugar isn't high enough to cause any symptoms.
Okay.
And those kind of people we find through screening lab work.
Okay.
And we'll do like an annual physical and check their labs, and we'll find elevated blood sugar. We'll also notice that there maybe diabetes runs in their family.
Okay.
Also, we notice that maybe the person's overweight or their diet isn't so great. And so, we have perfect opportunity to sort of catch diabetes when it's early and prevent it.
Okay.
Actually.
So in those kinds of situations, so you're looking at patients you already have coming in, and they have some of these signs that already kind of gives you a little bit of oh, we need to kind of check on this with these people.
Well, now someone that would have the signs of diabetes, and I just recently saw somebody that told me they had blurred vision, they were urinating a lot, and they just weren't feeling good. They had no energy, getting a little dizzy. And this person was very aware of their body, and he came in and we tested him, and his blood sugar was almost 400,
Okay.
which is 4 times what it should be.
So what should it be?
So your fasting blood sugar should be under 100
Okay.
if you're not diabetic. And then the blood sugar that we check after eating, which is called a postprandial blood sugar, shouldn't be over 120.
Okay.
So anybody that has a random blood sugar of 200 is considered diabetic,
Okay.
unless they just drank a 6-pack of Coke. And
Then
but
they're-
even then, usually they're a diabetic if their blood sugar is that high.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then we were talking a little bit before also, and I was telling her I wanted to focus on type 2 diabetes, but she was saying type 1 and type 2 are actually, they kind of go hand in hand. Sometimes if someone in a family has type 2, then the children might also have type 1. So first off, can you go talk a little bit about the difference between type 1 and type 2, what those are?
Okay, so type 1 diabetes, when there's a total absence of insulin. In other words, there's some cells in the pancreas that do not produce insulin. So we can't live without insulin. It's a hormone, and it actually takes sugar to the cells. It's part of the basic part of nutrition in our body. Our basic food is sugar, besides amino acids and vitamins. For our energy, we have to have sugar. So if you don't have sugar and you don't have insulin, then you can't live. So diabetes, that kind of diabetes is very dramatic. People get very sick. They usually end up in the hospital and end up on insulin. So type 2 diabetes is different in that you have insulin, but your body doesn't accept it or it doesn't work well. And this is through years of poor eating and also genetics.
Okay. So, and I'd be interested to have you tell the story that you were just telling me, because I thought they were completely separate
So
situations.
they're separate in the fact that one requires insulin, the other one may not require insulin, but if it gets worse, it does. But type 1 and type 2 diabetes can run in the same family. An example is my son-in-law is a type 1 and his mother's a type 2.
Okay.
And they always thought he had type 2 until they discovered that medicine and oral medication and food, changing his diet, eating different foods didn't work.
Oh,
So then,
okay. So he wasn't diagnosed until later, actually.
that's right.
Okay.
He became a type 1. He's in his 30s, which is type 1 tends to happen in people that are younger.
Okay.
Although I've seen a few adults in their 40s get it also.
Oh, really?
So you can't always rule that out just because they're
Okay.
not young. But yes,
Okay.
it tends to be younger, whereas type 2 tends to be in older adults. Although that's changing now because of our addiction to junk food, watching TV, being overweight, all these unhealthy activities that kids do now. We're finding that kids are being diagnosed with type 2 in grade school and high school, whereas before you never saw one. Maybe you might see one in their 20s or 30s, unusually. That would be unusual, but now...
Even in 20s and 30s, that was unusual.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it wasn't common.
Okay.
But usually it's after age 40 or 50 that
Okay.
you start seeing that. But now we're seeing them because there's an increased rate of obesity, I think, anyway, that's my opinion, obesity and just poor health habits that a lot of younger American children are getting diabetes at a
Okay.
younger age.
Wow.
And they don't have the benefit of screening. Oftentimes,
They're not
kids
even
are
thinking
considered
about
to
it
be
probably.
healthy. They're not necessarily going in for their annual exam.
Okay.
Though they're finding, they're doing screenings at schools, so this is another way that we're
They
finding
are.
it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Otherwise, a lot of these kids would, like you said, wouldn't even be in the ballpark, kind of, for anybody thinking they're having diabetes.
That's
They would be
right.
looking for it.
And if they didn't go to their doctors and get screened, they might not discover they're diabetic till they're in their 20s. And by that time, we've had a few people that we've seen that have already lost their vision, their kidney
Wow.
function's bad, they have all kinds of side effects because they've had the diabetes for so long.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Another question I had that you and I were talking about a little bit too, something I was reading is that there's certain people from not cultural, but different ethnicities are more prone to having diabetes. Can you talk about that a little
Well,
bit?
that's correct. Actually, the Native Americans have a high diabetes rate. There are some tribes in the United States that have up to 75%
Wow.
rate of diabetes. There's one tribe in Arizona, I think it's the Pima Indians. There's another tribe that they have a 50% diabetic rate, and that's been attributed to the diet that they changed to from their native diet, which they call the pre-colonial diet. Was a native diet, which was game, raw greens, nuts, fruits and vegetables in season. I mean, that's what they ate. And they were all skinny because they had to go hunting and
Right.
work for their food. And then all of a sudden, when the colonists came and put them on reservations, they gave them white flour, sugar, canned milk, fake cheese, that kind of stuff. And so they're trying to eradicate that from their diet. Actually, some tribes
Yeah.
have programs where they're
Cool.
trying to get their members to eat like they used to, and
Cool.
to learn to eat the pre-colonial diet again.
Wow, which is
Yes.
probably actually a good diet for all of us, because I feel like all of this dairy, sugar, wheat, for all of us.
Grains, yes,
yeah.
and that's actually true because now, just generally in America, the rate of diabetes is going up, and not just in non-white people.
Okay.
It's also more Caucasians are becoming diabetic.
Okay.
And we're attributing that to a lot more processed food, people drinking lots of sodas and eating candy and chips and things like that. And then the other half of that is not exercising it off. Like, I see children in my practice, and a lot of them don't even go outside. They stay inside playing video games, and their parents maybe aren't home, and and they're not doing their homework either. But the parents come home, they crack the whip, do the homework, but they don't get to go outside and
Right.
play.
Wow.
And so the ones that I notice are the healthiest are the ones that don't drink sodas every day. I mean,
Okay.
I've had one parent tell me she gave her children soda for breakfast because they asked for it. They wanted it. And my response was, you're the one that knows what they should be eating, not the kids.
Oh my
So
gosh.
she did actually quit giving them soda,
Okay,
but she was
good.
just trying to be nice, be friends with her
Yeah,
kids and
yeah.
give them soda for breakfast. But I was horrified when I heard that.
Yeah.
Because a couple of her kids were very overweight.
Oh.
And plus they had dental
Oh,
issues with dental
gosh.
caries and things like that.
So leading into that, what could you say to people that maybe their ethnicity or this lifestyle, like you said, like we're so like sugar's everywhere, like it's in our breakfast muffins, it's in our coffee, it's in our breakfast drinks, we have it
It's
for
in
snacks.
everything. It's in tomato sauce, ketchup, relish,
right.
salad dressing.
Like
I mean,
things
you name
think
it.
that are like healthy in their vegetables.
Yeah,
still
you
have
name
sugar
it.
in
So I think everybody should be screened for it. Number one, I mean, we want to find it early, because if you find somebody with a fasting blood sugar, say of 110 or 120, you know something's happening.
Okay.
Especially if it happens more than once, then you can do some more testing. And if they're not diabetic, but if they're borderline, that's when you can catch the disease early,
Okay.
and you can get sugar out of their diet and processed foods. Because I've seen people actually avoid getting diabetic, becoming diabetic, and also curing or controlling diabetes with diet and exercise alone. You don't necessarily need medication.
Okay.
The first intervention for diabetes, type 2 diabetes, should be lifestyle.
Okay.
It should be taking the sugar out, not eating white flour, white rice, lots of potatoes, which around this part of the world they eat a lot of tortillas and potatoes in their diet. Not much protein,
So what
vegetables and
so
fruit.
what would you tell people if you're saying, okay, you need to get off potatoes and tortillas, because we live in northern New Mexico, so it's like literally breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah, it's tortillas, fried eggs and bacon, and potatoes with chili on top.
Which is
Maybe
all
some beans on the
a
side.
little bit of protein, but mostly carbs.
So their diet would be healthy if they took out the sugar and the white flour and maybe the like they fried potatoes a lot.
Okay.
So that, and then just people around here don't eat enough fresh vegetables and fruit. Yeah, that's a big problem around
So if
here.
people maybe had their fried eggs, bacon, and beans and potatoes, but then didn't fry the potatoes, took the tortillas out, and maybe added some greens with that, do you feel like that would be enough?
That would be good, and then the tortilla could be whole grain, and it
Okay.
doesn't necessarily have to be wheat.
Okay.
And then the other thing is it's too starchy. If you're going to have potatoes, then why have bread? In other words, the diet here is too starchy. So there needs to really be a balance.
Okay.
And then I always try to mention to people, you can eat vegetables in the morning. Oriental people
Right.
eat vegetables for all 3 meals.
That's what
And
I
you
have for
look at
breakfast.
Oriental people, and they're typically very slim,
Yeah, okay.
and you have a low diabetic rate, and it's because of their diet and their culture
I love
and their
that,
traditions.
I love that, like thinking about that in a different way, because I think we're so used to having sweet, I don't know where this came from, but having pastries and cereal in the morning, which is super sweet, and starting to think about having something like more vegetable based, actually.
Well, that's because sugar does give you energy, and when you eat sugar, it gives you that boost of energy. But again, it's addicting. It affects our addiction center in the brain.
Okay.
And then the other thing is you come crashing down because you don't have enough, like say, complex carbohydrates, whole grains, or vegetables, or fresh fruit to maintain your blood sugar.
Okay.
So
that's where this thing comes in, where people eat it, and then around 10 in the morning they start crashing, or like 2
or
or 3 in
they
the afternoon.
get hungry again and they want something else to eat. So if you get a really good breakfast, and my rule is breakfast should be king, lunch should be queen, and dinner should be pauper.
Okay.
So the order of eating more in the morning and less as the day goes on,
Okay.
but just having all 3 meals.
Okay. Great, thank you. Is there anything else? Like, I'm also curious, once people are diagnosed with diabetes, like, do they have to take medication, or is it kind of situation dependent? Do they, like, how does that work?
It is situation dependent. There are some people that have it worse than others, and they have the insulin resistance, which means you make insulin, but it doesn't work. So there are some people like that, but most people, if you catch them early enough, you can control it with diet to begin with. And sometimes for years you can control it with diet. I have several patients that came in with very high blood sugars and are now their A1Cs around, which is a average blood sugar reading of every 3 months. That's a hemoglobin A1C.
Okay.
We usually do that every 3 months, every 3 to 6 months, depending on how severe the diabetes is. That their A1Cs drop down to below 6, which is almost normal, just from diet.
Okay.
And so they can be maintained on diet. There are many, many oral medications you can put them on before they even have to go on insulin.
Okay.
And I always tell them, why go on insulin and give yourself a shot every day and or several times a day and checking your blood sugar. You don't have to do that. You can control it if you eat right.
Okay.
If you don't eat sugar. And by the way, nobody should be eating a lot of sugar. I've taken sugar out of my diet. I'm not a diabetic, but I find that it's easier to control your weight. You feel better. You eat healthier foods. Your health overall is much better if you take all those processed foods out of your diet and eat more natural.
Okay. Are you completely off sugar, or you have like
I
once a
have
week
very little here and there, just such a
Okay.
tiny bit that, and it's usually cooked in a dessert or something, and
Okay.
oftentimes it's from fruit. But I made that goal a long time ago for myself, and I tell people, just because you're not a diabetic doesn't mean that you can eat a lot of sugar.
Right.
Sugar is not good for anybody,
Right,
really,
okay.
and it's free form.
Yeah.
It's like giving high octane fuel to somebody. I tell people, you don't put high octane fuel in your car. Why would you use it in your body? Think about the fuel you're giving your body.
Well, and I was just listening to a podcast last week, and this man was actually saying back in our prehistoric days that people would have sugar maybe once a year or something.
If they found a honey
Yeah.
or dried fruit, like
Yeah.
fruit on the trees that's dried naturally,
Yeah.
that would be really your only source of sugar. And honey is actually sweeter than sugar, but you
It's
wouldn't be
really
eating
high
it
glycemic
every
index.
single day.
Right. Yeah. So it's changed so much, and our bodies, I think, just have no way of processing the amounts that
right.
we're putting into it.
Our diet has changed, but the basic biochemistry of our body is from thousands of years ago, and that's still there. It's not going to change anytime soon.
Like there's nothing some little pill we can do to make sure we can eat as much sugar as we want, but it's still going to
Well, the pill costs money, and the pill has side effects. That's exactly.
I've heard that, because I don't think about with medication that I'm like, oh, that costs money, because I think they cost like $100 to $200 a month. I heard, right?
Well, it depends on the medication, but yes, you're getting into the big bucks when you're trying to treat somebody they're on maybe 3 or 4 different pills for blood sugar, and then along with diabetes comes hypertension, so you have to treat that, and then you have hyperlipidemia, which is excess cholesterol and triglycerides. Those are usually real high, so you're
usually
treating
all
more
go
than one thing
together.
at a time. Yeah, it's like a
Okay.
package deal.
Oh,
Those
okay.
3 things is called metabolic syndrome.
Okay.
And so a lot of people have all 3 things. And so the list of medication just goes on and on and on. And it can cost several hundred to thousands of dollars a month to treat
Wow.
that.
Okay.
And
So
that's a hit on the insurance companies. Here we have more and more people becoming diabetic. It's going to get more expensive, and the insurance companies are going to have some problems with that.
Yeah.
Not only that, but our society
Well,
just
it's
having to pay for it.
Yeah, and it's one of the points I was making too when I was starting to write out this email, because I feel like I was reading how I think it's like $700 million a year they spend just on diabetes and diabetes-related illnesses just in our country.
I would say more than 700
Really?
million. I would call it in the billions.
Wow.
Yeah, more than that.
That's one of my pet peeves, is this whole insurance thing. A lot of this stuff is actually, not everybody can prevent it, because there's some different situations, but a lot of it can be preventable. And we're talking about the high cost of healthcare, and then when people are like, oh, I can't afford to eat healthy, which that might cost an extra $100 a month versus their pills that they have to take, because a lot of times it's out of pocket too. I don't think the insurance covers everything.
That's right. And it's not only just the quality of the food you're eating, it's the amount you're eating. So you can, I always say a diet shouldn't cost money. Maybe you're going to be eating fresh foods a little more, but maybe you eat a little bit less. So the cost I don't think would be that much higher. But the cost to society is huge when you have all these chronic diseases going on.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much. Is there anything else that we've left out that you feel like you want to tell people and let them know?
I would just say that just if diabetes runs in your family, or if you're overweight, or if you haven't been eating right and you want to know what's going on, I think it's so important to be screening for that.
Okay.
And the other thing is the basics for good health is good food, water, the air we breathe, and the home you live in. And those need to be taken care of first before you add high blood pressure medicine, diabetes medicine, and all this other stuff. If you can pay more attention to that, your health will be much better.
Like prevention and taking care of your scene, like low stress, make things cozy.
That's
nice
right.
And clean.
You could. Dr. Weil wrote a book about the 7 steps to a healthy life. And that's a really good book, and he talks about how important it is to breathe, to eat right, to drink plenty of pure water, to breathe clear air, to keep your stress down, and just to have fun and do all that stuff first before you think about treating diseases and getting on all these medications.
Great. Thank you so much. Great information. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Great. And Catherine, well, we're trying to get her to stay, but she's retiring soon. So we won't see too much more of her, but I just want to thank you, and she's awesome. So if you want to find her, you can find her on our Each website, or just shoot me an email and I'll get you in touch with her. So thanks, Catherine.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.